When you visit our region, you can't help but notice the plethora of military activities, punctuated by lots of variety in land, sea, and air-based modes of transport. Some are the epitome of stealth, and some are extremely loud and incredibly close. That's because Hampton Roads is home to the world's largest Navy base. Yes, you heard that, the world's largest Navy base. It's located right here in Norfolk. The U.S. East Coast Master Jet Base is here as well. It's also the home of the Navy SEAL teams that eliminated Osama bin Laden and rescued Captain Phillips, also known as Tom Hanks of the movie fame, who was taken hostage by the Somali pirates. In civilian speak, we're often regarded as Pentagon South here in Hampton Roads. And based on your request at last year's Extuplecon, we've invited our guest here today. He's going to share stories about military leadership, about the value of training, and he's going to feature some pretty incredible true stories of crisis management. It's my honor to introduce Captain Robert Goose Geis, Chief of Staff for Navy Region Mid-Atlantic, for all shore-based Navy personnel and shore activities in the region, which encompasses now 20 states, 14 installations, and 50 naval operational support centers. Goose, yes, he gave me permission to call him Goose, and it gives me that Top Gun level kind of thrill to introduce him. He's a native of San Diego, California, and he's a graduate of the University of California at San Diego with a Bachelor of Arts in Communications. That's why we communicate so well. He was commissioned as an ensign after graduating from Aviation Officer Candidate School, OCS, in October of 1987 and was designated as a Naval Flight Officer, NFO, in 1989. He deployed with the USS Enterprise, CVN 65, in support of both Operation Enduring Freedom, OEF, and Operation Iraqi Freedom, OIF, and executed the first East Coast deployment of the Super Hornet in 2006. Captain Geis attended the Naval War College, where he completed his master's degree in National Security and Strategic Studies. His command tour at Naval Air Station, NAS, Oceana, here in Virginia Beach, covered numerous high-visibility activities, including leading the recovery from the 2012 FA-18 mishap in Virginia Beach, which I'm sure he'll share today. If you didn't hear about that, you were living under a rock, even around the world. He then was assigned to Staff of Commander, Naval Installations Command in Washington, D.C. as the Director of Operations, leading a program totaling more than $1.2 billion with a B, including force protection, fire and emergency management, safety, air, and port operations. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Goose Geis.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me. And I appreciate the invitation. It's quite an honor here. And although I know it was kind of a request to get something different at this year's conference, but I certainly do feel a little bit like a fish out of water. So I was going to do my little WAS joke. So I'm not a WAS. I don't speak computer language. I had an apple for lunch today. I can't build an apple. That's my one joke. That's all I got. I'm not really a funny guy, so that's it. I can't build it. You're too kind. As you heard in my intro, I've been serving our nation for 27 years as a naval officer. Oh, thank you. And it's been an unbelievable ride, and it's not over yet, so I'm not looking to retire tomorrow, that's for sure. I love my job. I love what I do. I've loved serving my nation, and I'm actually a second-generation naval officer. My dad served in Korea and Vietnam. He retired after 26 years as a lieutenant commander. Started as an enlisted man, an E1, worked his way up the whole chain, so quite a legacy to fill. And my son was just commissioned as an ensign, and he's in med school right now up in Bethesda, so he's the third-generation naval officer, so pretty excited about that. We're very proud of my wife and I are very proud of our kids. So, but I've flown combat missions over Iraq and Afghanistan. I've been flying my whole Navy career, and I want to just put out a challenge. If I use an acronym that I don't explain, I'm going to throw $1 on the table, and afterwards, the first person that can run up and get it, they get the $1. So my goal today is no acronyms, okay? No acronyms. So how many people saw the movie Officer and Gentleman? It's really old, okay? Older than me, not quite. So Aviation Officer Candidate School, AOCS. that was the movie that kind of showed what Officer and Gentleman was showcasing aviation officer candidate school. So that's how I got my commission. And how many people saw Top Gun? Okay, so Goose, the guy in the back, radar guy, that's what I did. So that's what I do. So my whole career is kind of shaped by movies. But in my call sign, I'll just put it on the table right now. So my call sign, Goose. My last name is Geis, Geis, often mispronounced Geese. Geese, Goose, Geis. My whole life I've been that. It's not rocket science. I didn't do anything crazy. I didn't do anything silly to get the call sign. It's literally just that. My actual first call sign was Poulter. And in call signs, you don't get a chance to pick them, and they are given to you. So my first call sign was Poulter, Geis. It's pretty good, right? But if you miss all the wires when you try to land on an aircraft carrier, it's called a bolter. Bolter, sounds too close. Nobody wanted to fly with me. It went back to Goose, Geese, Geis, like I was my whole life. True story. And if I had $1 for every time I heard, talk to me, Goose, throughout my career, I could retire and not have to get a second job. So anyhow, I've been doing this for 27 years, and I want to talk a little bit about leadership, and I want to talk a little bit about transition, and I want to talk a little bit about change, because, ERP, change management, you all manage change, you manage the future, and that's kind of what I really wanted to key on a little bit at the beginning of this talk. So, my 27 years in the Navy, my first deployment was Desert Storm. When I left for going on deployment, there was no return date. I was on board one aircraft carrier. There was a number of 6. It's the first time we had surged that many aircraft carriers for a wartime scenario since, not counting Grenada. So really all the way to Vietnam. It was the last time the Navy had done that. So we had no return date. So my wife, we had a 5-week-old son. My wife, we kissed goodbye after, our child was 5 weeks old. And we're going on cruise, and we don't know when you're coming home. So that was my first deployment. I flew the S-3 Viking, and in the video that was showing, it actually showed a tail of it. You probably didn't recognize it, but I got a little warm in my heart for that airplane. And it was a carrier-based jet. It flew. It was designed to hunt and kill enemy submarines. It was designed in the 60s, was built in the 70s, and it was an analog airplane. So what does that mean? Well, if you looked at, World War II movies and you looked at the gauges of airspeed and altitude, same cockpit configuration with just a little CRT screen that made the difference. So really it was an analog airplane. The flight controls, when you had the stick, it was pulleys and cables and went from the stick out to the flight controls. So the same way they were during World War II. Fast forward, we'll talk about the mission computers. You guys are all computer people. So the mission computer. Anybody remember the Commodore 64 computer? Right. So the mission computer for the S-3 Viking was two Commodore 64 computers, and we loaded the mission computer with a tape cartridge, an 8-track tape cartridge that was literally this big, this wide, weighed about 8 pounds, and you slid it in, locked it in, and it had probably about a 60% reliability rate. And if it didn't load properly, you got a couple attempts, otherwise it would shut down and you just fly around and use your Mark 1 Mod 0 eyeballs for looking for submarines. So that's how I started my career, and I did that all the way through about 10 years of flying. And then I transitioned to Super Hornets. So Super Hornet, and it was really displayed dramatically here on the screen. In fact, if you look at the helmet that had the check marks on there, that is actually the squadron that I commanded. And it was the first East Coast Super Hornet squadron, which was pretty cool. So here I am, an S-3 guy, a backseater, very unusual for a guy like me to command the first East Coast Super Hornet squadron. But the airplane is absolutely amazing. Your taxpayer dollars have built an unbelievably fantastic machine. So remember what I said about the S-3 Viking. The Super Hornet is all digital. When you put a stick input in as a pilot and you say you want to go bank left, you put the stick input in. Well, there's no cables or pulleys that go from the stick. That input is measured and sensed by a computer, which decides what you want to do, and it sends electrical signals out to the hydraulic actuators on your flight controls, and it decides what inputs to do in order to make the airplane do what you said you wanted it to do. So it's pretty amazing, a completely digital airplane. Also, all the weapon systems are fused together. So if I'm seeing something on the radar or I'm seeing something on the forward-looking infrared sensor, if I want to laze a target on the ground, all that information is fused in the cockpit and it's recorded. It also talks to all the weapon systems, so the weapons. So if I want to drop a laser-guided weapon, or a GPS-guided weapon, I can load the coordinates by just simply lasing the ground or by putting in the proper coordinates in, and the bomb goes exactly where it's supposed to go with an unbelievably high circular error probability, or it hits the target that it's supposed to hit. If you want it to go in the second story window, it'll go in the second story of the window, as long as you do your job right. So pretty amazing. Additionally, and you guys are all network folks, this is kind of cool stuff. So I talked about this 8-track big old cartridge. Super Hornet, you go into your PC, classified PC, you load all the mission data on, you load it onto a card, a small PC card, take it out to your jet, load up the jet, it's got all the information you need for your mission, including GPS data, including moving maps, just like your car, so I'm flying anywhere in the world, and I have a moving map of where I'm trying to go or where I've been, so it's pretty cool stuff. Additionally, all my threats, all my weapon systems data, all gets loaded in beforehand. What an amazingly better way to do business. Also, once I'm done flying and I land, let's say the aircraft detects an anomaly or an error, a malfunction in the jet somewhere. You pull out the maintenance card, you load it onto a different computer system, an unclassified maintenance computer system, and it runs all the diagnostics and says, hey, did you see that your right rudder didn't work properly? And if you say yes, it automatically sends that information to the maintenance desk, which automatically orders a part, and away you go. Completely networked. So in my career, I've gone from completely analog, old school World War II type stuff, all the way now to a completely digital world. So pretty amazing stuff, all in my lifetime. So I guess really when I think of the link between your business and me, I have now flown in a networked airplane, and in my solutions and the Navy solutions for the future really does include networking solutions. So that was, in my mind, that's what I could do. So, okay, what I want to do is give you a little Navy 101, but before that, you saw the cool video here. If we could roll the other Sea Power video, that'd be awesome. Cool stuff. First PowerPoint slide. There's about 10, so I'm going to not read the slide. I'm a big believer in not reading the slide. I'd like to have a dialogue. Additionally, you can stop me anytime and ask questions, or you can wait to the end and we can just go through a dialogue. I'll walk around and we'll just talk, if that's okay. So I timed this, and it's probably about 15 minutes, so we're going to have all kinds of time. Or you guys can go back to lunch, either or, your choice. So our Navy today, your Navy today, 325,000 folks, both officer enlisted, and the numbers are up there on the screen. Additionally, we have a ready reserve force of about 107,000 folks. Of that 107,000, we have 3,300 that are activated and forward deployed. So right now, there are folks whose day job is something else. They may be a banker, they may be a police officer, they may be something in the civilian world, but right now they're activated and they're boots on ground in Afghanistan. Yes, sailors, boots on ground in Afghanistan, providing stability for that country to help them forge a better future. So pretty amazing. So maybe friends that you have are reservists, and they at any time could be called up to go overseas and defend. Over the course of the last In 2007, there were actually more sailors deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq, boots on ground, than there were sailors on ships at sea in the Persian Gulf. I mean, it was an amazingly odd time to be in the Navy. We were doing things that were not in our mission area, and it's all to help out the Army. One team, one fight. We really do believe that. Folks may not remember prior to 1986, we were kind of doing our own thing, and I kind of alluded to it. The Navy was alone and unafraid. We couldn't, during Desert Storm, if I wanted to talk to the Air Force, or if I wanted to get our attack plan that was centrally planned by the Air Force in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, we literally had to fly an S-3 Viking from the aircraft carrier every day to go pick up this air tasking order. And then we would take it, we would read through it, find our mission lines, and then we would fly our missions. All done Pony Express. And then you fast forward today, and now we're 1986, and it took a few years to get it implemented, but now we're completely jointed. We do joint planning with the Air Force all the time. Right now, flying over Iraq and Syria are joint forces, Army and Navy, not really too many helicopters, but Air Force and Navy pilots are right now chatting on a secret internet, and they're planning their missions right now for tomorrow. They're doing it via the internet, on a secret internet, and they are doing collaborative planning. That didn't happen 30 years ago. That didn't happen 20 years ago. So again, we are fully networked. We're supporting one team, one fight. The Army couldn't continue to sustain their deployments, so the Navy stepped up and provided what we called individual augmentees to Iraq and Afghanistan, up to 10,000 sailors on the ground in Afghanistan. Pretty amazing. I wanted to also let you see the number of ships and submarines we have. As you see, about 289. That number, when I first joined the Navy in 1988, we were building towards a 600-ship Navy. We never made it. I think we got up to a peak of about 450 ships. And then we had the peace dividend. The Soviet Union went away, and now we're struggling to get up to 300 ships right now. Why does that matter? Right now we have 10 aircraft carriers, which is the capital ship of the United States Navy. All of them are nuclear powered. The way we maintain them, and we maintain our ships very well, but the way we maintain them is we really need 3 ships for every one that's deployed. And the reason why we do that is we have one that's forward deployed. For instance, right now, the USS George Herbert Walker Bush, CVN 77, is over in the Persian Gulf flying combat over Iraq and Syria. There's a carrier deployed in the Far East, and there's a carrier in transit. They also have 3 aircraft carriers that are currently preparing to deploy. We just don't send folks over untrained and go overseas. We put our folks through a series of exercises before they deploy to make sure they're properly trained and equipped and ready to go into combat. So we do that, but with about a third of their forces. And the other third is in doing some type of maintenance after deployment. Lots of things break when you're on deployment. Some things you fix on the fly. Some stuff you just let it atrophy until you get home, especially if it's a system that's not either has redundancy or has is not mission critical. And then you fix it when you get home. And so a third of the ships are in some type of availability, we call it, where it's in a maintenance period. And right here across the river, if you literally go outside of the Marriott and look across the river, you'll see one of the Navy's 5 shipyards, the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, and they're doing maintenance right now on an aircraft carrier as well as numerous surface combatants, cruisers and destroyers and the like. So that's why that 289 number is pretty important, and 10 aircraft carriers is pretty important. You guys have probably all heard, I know I've heard it my whole career, and even before, the first time there's a crisis, including when ISIL started, or whatever we call them today, started getting hot and heavy in Iraq and Syria, the president asked what every president asks, which is, where are the carriers? The United States Navy flew for the first month. George Herbert Walker Bush flew for the first month with no Air Force assistance, all Navy airplanes doing combat for a month before the Air Force was able to deploy and get into the fight. True statement, not throwing stones at the Air Force. I love the Air Force, but that's the fact. So pretty exciting stuff. I also want to tell you, I'm a naval aviator. I'm a naval officer, and I fly. Okay, I can tell you for a fact, I've gone to numerous places. People go, "Oh, you fly? You're in the Air Force." No, I'm in the Navy. I'm a naval aviator. I trained in the Navy. I've been a naval officer my whole career. I'm naval officer first, aviator second. And only naval aviators fly off aircraft carriers. Only naval aviators fly Navy airplanes. Okay, so we love the Air Force, but anybody can land on 12,000 feet of runway. Okay, that's all I got to say. Additionally, before I get off this slide, I want to make sure you know your Navy just celebrated its 239th birthday on Monday. So happy birthday, Navy. You'll notice that's about a year older than our country. The first 2 frigates were ordered by the Continental Congress to the Continental Navy before we became a nation. So the United States Navy is a year older than the nation. So pretty cool stuff. So Missy was nice enough to say that I work in the shore domain. So I've been operational the vast majority of my career, but I commanded a naval air station, which here locally as well, and I'm part of the shore domain. So what is our job? The Shore Enterprise, or Commander Navy Installations Command, who is a 3-star admiral, and he runs all of the Navy installations across the world. He does that through a series of regions and installations. Our only existence, the only reason why we exist in the Shore Enterprise is to support the training and the deployment of our operational forces. So we're the enablers, okay? We're the software running behind the scenes to make sure that we get our forces deployed and overseas. So I did the operational things for the vast majority of my career, about 20 years, and now I've been in the Shore Enterprise for the last 4, so pretty cool stuff. So there are Navy installations across the entire world. This slide here kind of shows where we're at. The United States is broken up into 5 different regions, 6 if you count Hawaii. There's a little, you can't really see it, there's a little region that's around the national capital area. There's about 5 installations in there, and they handle all the presidential type stuff that the Navy does. So there's a really small region, but we'll get a little close-up of the Mid-Atlantic region. But you'll notice Europe and Africa and the Middle East and Singapore and Guam and Japan all have Navy installations. So 70 installations worldwide. We actually just commissioned our very first brand new installation since the early 70s in Romania. Naval station in Romania. And what we're doing is supporting the President's missile shield of Europe. And it's a pretty interesting concept. We can talk about it more a little later. But again, worldwide, 70 installations across the world. Okay, the Navy Region Mid-Atlantic, that's where I currently work. We're homeported and headquartered right here in Norfolk, Virginia, that way, about 4 miles. Traffic was horrible getting over here, so I almost was a little bit late. But you'll notice that the region is pretty large, and it doesn't have the National Capital Region cut out of it. But we go all the way from the South Carolina, North Carolina border, all the way up to Maine, and out to Wisconsin and Michigan and Illinois. We have one Navy installation in Chicago area, Great Lakes. That's where we call that the quarterdeck of the Navy. That's where every single sailor gets their boot camp training, their very first initial training in the Navy. About 44,000 sailors a year make their way through Great Lakes, and they're the seed corn. They're our future leaders. They're the ones that are going to be leading the Navy in 20, 30 years. So very important mission there in Great Lakes, and we just gained those installations in the last couple months. But as you can see, we're far-flung, most of the East Coast. Yes, we are kind of the Pentagon of the South, and unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we're so close to D.C. that we get all the special projects. So if somebody in the Navy or the Department of Defense wants to look at a Navy installation, they come to Norfolk, or they come to Oceana, or they come to one of our installations because we're close, and again, we're a major fleet concentration area. Let's see, 14 installations, 20 states, 237 smaller units, 50 NOSCs, Naval Operational Support Centers, and then special areas, which could be as a small fence line, or it could be an antenna farm, it could be something like that. But those are, again, scattered out throughout the region. We have 500 folks on our staff. Only 100 of them are actually uniformed sailors. The other 400 are civilians that are dedicated Department of Navy civilians. Some of them are retired military. Some have been civil servants their entire career. Fantastically devoted people. I don't think I had a real realization of the magnitude of how much they bring to our organization until I was in the shore enterprise. When I was flying operational, I never really saw our civil servants. Everyone around me was usually uniformed. But since I've been in the shore enterprise, I can tell you for a fact that the Navy can't operate without our civil servants. We have one. Where's Beth? We have one right there, our public affairs officer, Beth Baker. Stand up, give a round of applause. Our civil servants are awesome. She didn't know I was going to do that. She's going to hit me when I get off the stage. Again, I had command of Naval Air Station Oceana, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But an installation is really like a small city. So on NES Oceana, I had Dam Neck Annex, where we had some special folks that trained out of there, and then I had an outlying field. So I really had 3 installations I was in command of. I had 3 fire stations, 2 movie theaters, I had 5 restaurants, I had dormitories, I had 36 holes of golf, a skeet range, horse stables, police department, fire department. I had, of course, an airport. I had a couple runways, actually, 5 runways in total, 2 chapels, 2 bowling alleys. I had lawyers' offices. I had schoolhouses, child care facilities, and we actually provide counseling services, professional counselors for both our military and our families, our military members and our families. So all this, about 14,000 folks on NAS Oceana and Dam Neck Annex. At Naval Station Norfolk, about 40,000 folks work on that base. So to kind of put that in perspective, that is the size of many medium-sized cities in the nation today. So to kind of put that in perspective. Okay, Hampton Roads. I grew up in San Diego. I love the West Coast. I love the weather. It's awesome. But I always read about the history of the United States. And I was a U.S. history minor in college. I love history. When I got here, I was in like nirvana because there's so much history in this area. In fact, you really can't write the history of America unless you talk about, at least in my mind, talk about the Hampton Roads area. So if you just kind of read through, I'm not going to read through them all, but we built our very first Navy ship here in this area in 1799. We have the very first continuously operating naval hospital right here in Portsmouth, Virginia, right across the river, since 1830. In fact, little trivia, that actually was a Union hospital, then it became a Confederate hospital, and the Surgeon General of the hospital was actually a prisoner in the dungeon of that naval hospital that still exists across the river, and then was liberated and then became Union hands again. And they didn't throw the Confederates in jail; they cared for them. Just saying. True statement. The picture up on the top there is the Battle of Hampton Roads. That's the CSS Virginia on the left, or for us Yankees, it's the Merrimack. And the one on the left there, let's see, your right, is the Monitor. So that battle literally took place about 4 miles away from here, right off the coast of Norfolk. Pretty exciting stuff, at least to me. If you look at more modern times, in 1907, Teddy Roosevelt launched the Great White Fleet. Anybody know what that is? From your deep, dark recesses of U.S. history way back when. So the Great White Fleet was Teddy Roosevelt's way to show the world that the United States was a world power. So we launched our big, brand new, painted bright white battleships and sent them around the world. And they were to show the flag. They didn't partake in any battles. They just went around the world, cruised entirely around the world, just to show that the United States could do it. That happened. That was launched from right here in 1907. Additionally, close to my heart, in 1910, the very first launch of a heavier-than-air aircraft launched off a cruiser, the USS Birmingham, again, almost exactly where the Monitor and Merrimack fought. Launched off on a rainy day, much like today, and went about 4 miles. First time ever an aircraft launched off a ship. Okay, right here in Hampton Roads. Pretty exciting stuff. Love it. You should come back here and spend more time. That's a plug for my Norfolk and Virginia Beach city councils. So there's a bunch of really cool logos on this slide. Okay. My command is actually kind of in the middle. It's got the little red and blue kind of round shield there. That's Navy Region Mid-Atlantic. But they're not just cool logos. Each one of those represents a command, a Joint Command, an Air Force Command, a Navy Command, just a bunch of different commands in this area that have global impact. So for instance, U.S. Fleet Forces, it's the one right in the center. It's got the 4 stars underneath it. It's blue with the light blue with the eagle in the center. So that logo is for U.S. Fleet Forces. U.S. Fleet Forces used to be called the Atlantic Command, U.S. Atlantic Fleet, but it is responsible, that command is responsible for manning, training, and equipping the United States Navy. The United States Navy, right here in Hampton Roads, right here in Norfolk. Air Combat Command, which is the light blue stars on the lower left-hand side with the red, white, and blue, the light blue. That's Air Combat Command Shield. They train all, and they are responsible for all of the Air Force combat aircraft right in Langley across the Hampton Roads Bay Bridge Tunnel there. So pretty exciting stuff right here in this area. So we have not just local commands. We don't have a local impact. All these commands have global impact. The other thing, everybody knows what NATO is, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, right? So headquarters in Brussels, the Atlantic headquarters is right here in Norfolk. That's a little known fact. A lot of people don't know that. So we really do have an international and a world impact right here in this area. Okay, economy. Wouldn't be a Navy slide saying how important we are without talking about money. So this slide really just talks about, the number of folks we have, about 275 folks in this area, in the Hampton Roads area. Of that 275, it's both active duty, retirees, our civil servants, our families, and we make up a pretty large percentage of the population. And then the economic impact, amazing. If you look at the two figures on this side of the screen, yep, so right down there, $15 billion with a B, $1 billion economic impact, and that was 2011. You know, the data lags, so we'll be crunching the 2012 numbers here pretty soon. But that's goods and services, that's labor, that's non-labor, that's construction, that's procurement. It's the whole 9 yards, $15 billion. Huge. About 50% of the economy in this area is wrapped up in the government, which is good because it helped us through the Great Recession, but it's bad because as we get to the continued era of tight budgets, you know, sequester is going to continue. Nobody really knows. We have to plan that it's going to, and you know, the expenditures are going to go down. And so if we are 50% of the economy here, that could present a problem for the local area. So if you're going around town here, you'll hear a lot of the people talk about trying to diversify the economy. It's good for us. It's good for the region. San Diego was very successful in doing it when I was growing up. It used to be a sleepy little Navy town, and now it's a diversified economy. So I think the Hampton Roads area is going to is really going to try and do that same thing the best they can. Lots of industry. Obviously, the shipbuilding and ship repair industry is huge in this area. It may be tied to the government, but it is skilled trades and craftsmen. It's a really important part of the economy, and there's a high-tech trying to blossom in this area as well. So the future, I think, is very bright for this area. My boss wanted to make sure I talked about our priorities. So here's our priorities. Of course, if you've been reading the news, you know, the Navy is not immune to the problems that the society has as a whole. We've launched straight in to trying to solve the problem of protecting our sailors from destructive behavior, whether that behavior is excess alcohol consumption, drinking and driving, sexual assault, domestic violence. All of those issues we consider to be degraders in our readiness. Not only is it bad for our sailors, it's bad for our family, our Navy family. So we've been, I think, really leaders in trying to tackle this problem head on. I would argue that while we certainly aren't where we want to be, we certainly have a long road to hoe. We definitely need to continue, attacking this problem. I hope we get to zero. Hope's not a strategy. We're working aggressively to do that. But if you look at society as a whole, we're certainly not the only ones that are dealing with this problem. I have a 20-year-old daughter that's on a college campus, and I worry about her on that campus as much as I worry about my sailors every day. So certainly, I'm not trying to minimize the issue. What I'm trying to say is that the Navy is aggressively attacking it, as you would expect us to, as we fully expect to do. It is what we should do, and that's what we're going to do. The other thing that I think is fascinating, and this is kind of new in the last few years, When I first joined the Navy, people would come in and they'd get out, and we were just like, hey, thanks for your service, which is great. People rose to the right hand, and they wanted to defend the country, and that's fantastic. But I think now we're trying to take a much more holistic view. We are producing not just sailors, but we're producing, the future leaders of America. And so whether people serve for 4 years or 40 years, we want to help our sailors transition to the civilian workforce. So as you look and you look at your business, there are smart sailors that are getting out of the Navy because they've done their time, they're retiring, whatever it is. They may be 25 years old, they may be an old guy like me, 50 years old. But the fact is that eventually all of us transition out of the military. And the Navy's trying to do a lot more to prepare our sailors to be better employees. They already come with great work ethic. They already come ready to go to work when they come in the morning. They show up on time. They listen to people. They take orders. They work hard for an honest day's pay. But we're trying to expand the horizons, get them to think a little bit more effectively, and that'll make better employees for you. So we've really started putting a lot of time into transitioning for our veterans, our future veterans. It's pretty exciting stuff. Energy. You may have read in the last few years, the Navy's embarked on a very, very ambitious plan on trying to become much greener. When I first joined the Navy, I will tell you for a fact that on my first cruise, Desert Storm, in 1990, 1991, we threw everything overboard. We just did. Every piece of trash, piece of metal, didn't matter, we threw it overboard. That was just the way it was. That was stupid. That was wrong. We're just better than that. And we are much better than that. We are now. We recycle everything. We have actually trash compactors on the ship. We have plastic compressors that takes, plastic trash and makes big pucks out of them. So when we show up into a port, we take the puck and we give it to either here in the United States or the husbanding agent when we're overseas, and we recycle it. We don't throw things overboard anymore. We just don't do that. Which, if I think about it, even food throwing overboard as a pilot, I don't like that, because you know what follows food? Sharks. Not a big fan of sharks if you go in the water next to your aircraft carrier, so I'm really glad we don't throw stuff overboard anymore. But it's not just being better stewards of our environment. It's becoming green. The Navy has invested in biofuels. We've flown aircraft, including a Hornet and a Super Hornet, on a biodiesel fuel. We have ships that have cruised, deployed. I don't know if they deployed out of the area, but they've definitely done exercises off the coast just on biofuel. And of course, we're nuclear powered for all of our capital warships. So we certainly take energy stewardship to heart, and we're trying to do the right thing by our kids, and that's what we need to do, is continue to protect our future, not just our citizens today, but our future as well. Here in Norfolk, there's a big photovoltaic farm, basically. They're getting some energy from the sun. On my old installation, Naval Station Oceana, we have 3 plants that take ground source heat wells, and they cool and heat both from a sewage effluent and then also just by using just an effluent underneath the ground that we heat and cool buildings. So it reduced our energy consumption by 1/3 by putting in these plants. So pretty exciting stuff. Again, your Navy looking to do the right thing by the environment. I already talked about the budgetary restrictions. I'm not going to keep going about that. Telling this Navy story, that's what I'm doing right now, and hopefully we'll get into some good Q&A here in a second. Really, is it 13:48 already? And transportation, I kind of talked about being here almost late here when I got here. Transportation in this area needs some work. The Navy's a partner. We're working with both the Commonwealth of Virginia and the local agencies here in the area to be part of the solution as we get smarter on how we move around the area. And then compatible development and build community partnerships. And I really want to talk about that on the next couple of slides. So we alluded to this a little bit, and thank you again for the introduction. I was the executive officer of NAS Oceana, Naval Air Station Oceana, for about 18 months, and then 3 weeks into taking command. So now I'm in charge on April 6th at 12:06 p.m. Right after right at noon, lunchtime, Good Friday. An aircraft took off of NAS Oceana, had basically a one-of-a-kind dual-engine failure, And after 71 seconds, 2.1 miles from the airfield, it landed into an apartment complex. Engulfed the complex in flames. 27 units were destroyed. Dozens of people were displaced. No one was seriously injured. No one was killed. It's been dubbed the Good Friday miracle. And while I certainly don't have a problem calling it a miracle, certainly I believe in divine intervention, and I can't talk about that day without that. However, the immediate responses and then the after effects is what I want to talk about. That was not a miracle. We spent years developing a relationship with the city of Virginia Beach and then the other city that surrounds Naval Air Station Oceana, the city of Chesapeake. We spent years developing a relationship with the leadership. Our police chief knew their police chief by name. Our fire chief knows the city of Virginia Beach and the city of Chesapeake fire chief by name. We trained regularly. We have an annual air show at Oceana. Every year we invite the city of Virginia Beach and the city of Chesapeake out to partake in a major mass casualty drill, a month and a half before the air show to make sure we're prepared for any eventualities. So we've been training with the city. Our firefighters know each other. Our police officers know each other. Our leadership knows each other. And we were, and that day, that training took effect, and we were able to do it operationally. Just a couple of, maybe again, divine intervention type moments. For whatever reason, we decided it was time to train the City of Virginia Beach firefighters on how to fight an aircraft mishap 3 months before the crash. We trained every single City of Virginia Beach firefighter on how to fight an aircraft fire. Well, it's not like why is that important? Well, it's not a building. It's not a car. When an aircraft burns, you have to worry about, weapons, an ejection seat that has rocket motors in it. You have to worry about, of course, the structure of the aircraft itself is made out of carbon fibers. There's some things you need to do to make sure you fight that fire in a certain way. Of course, the fuel and all the other hazardous materials that are associated with an aircraft. We literally, all 300 firefighters in the city of Virginia Beach, finished up their training 2 months before. The month before the mishap, we wanted to put that training to use, so we did a mishap drill in a lightly populated area called Pungo, just south of Virginia Beach. And we did a scenario where we took an aircraft firefighter training that we have, we dragged it out there. It's powered by propane, or the flames are powered by propane. Put the flames on. We hid the ejection seats away from the actual structure of the jet, and we called away the city of Virginia Beach because it's their jurisdiction out in town, and they rolled up on it. They did everything they were supposed to do, absolutely, completely by the book. They fought the fire the way they were supposed to. They had all the proper safety equipment on. They found the ejection seats. They approached them properly. They disarmed them like they were supposed to. Again, training, and it all came to fruition that day. That day when the call went out, the city of Virginia Beach firefighters rolled. The United States Navy firefighters from Naval Air Station Oceana rolled. They showed up at the same time. They set up an incident command post that was fully integrated. There wasn't two separate, the Navy one and the city one, fully integrated, just like we trained, just like you would expect us to do. The city, the police departments, the City of Virginia Beach, the Sheriff's Department, City of Virginia Beach Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, the Virginia Highway Patrol, all showed up, all integrated. We had our Master at Arms Police Department. They couldn't be armed out in town, but they were part of the security force. Again, completely integrated. So that was exactly how we planned, and it was amazing. So I talk about the miracle of the Good Friday miracle, but when I look back at it, with pride at the teamwork that we developed, the training that we instituted ahead of time, and that we're still doing today. Because Lord knows you have to be always prepared for the next event. And then the leadership discussions. Prior to that event, the City of Virginia Beach, the mayor, the city manager, the CEO and XO of Oceana meet quarterly to talk about all kinds of stuff, whether it's compatible use of land around the air station, or whether it's jet noise, or whether it's some building that the city wants to do. All vetted, all discussed, all openly, all candidly as one team. Okay, because we live in the city, right? We're your neighbors. We live in the community. our spouses are teachers and firefighters and, healthcare workers. And, we are a part of the community. The Navy's integrated in. It's really just one community. There aren't multiple communities. So, to kind of wrap this up, again, not a miracle that day. It was really a product of communication, mutual trust, admiration, and plain good business. And that's kind of the takeaway for you. How does this translate? If you don't know the people that you're working with by name, if you haven't met them in person, not just via email, I love email and I love talking to people on the phone. I would much rather have a face-to-face or a VTC at a minimum where you can see the reactions, you can talk to people, have that human communication. You have to build trust. You have to be able to work with another person side by side or across the airways. And it's just good business, regardless of what business that is. So that's it for the slides. And I can either stand up here to answer questions or I can walk around. Your choice. If there are any questions. Yes, sir.
I'm a motorcyclist, and I travel all over the United States. And I got to ask this question, especially here in the West Coast. In the middle of the Mojave Desert, there is a Navy facility that says across the top of it, submarine research. What does it do?
It's classified. If I don't know the answer, I'm just going to say it's classified. We have, actually, it's amazing. There are some Navy facilities that aren't anywhere near the water, and that's one of them. So they do research for submarines. It's mostly systems. I guess that's the right way to say that. But we have weapon stations all over. We have a weapon station in Crane, Indiana. We have a weapon station in Yorktown. So we have in Concord, California. So we have facilities that aren't right next to the water. So. Do you wear your protective gear when you're riding your motorcycle, I hope? Just say yes. Okay, perfect. That's right. Good answer. What else? That's it.
There are pilots in the room. Sorry, I'm geeking about this stuff.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you all. So, again...